The watch that changed everything. The boardroom on the 42nd floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Richard Castellano stood at the head of the mahogany conference table, his navy vest perfectly tailored, his voice sharp as he addressed the 5 executives seated before him. Gentlemen, our quarterly earnings are down 8%. This is unacceptable. Richard was 38 years old. The youngest CEO in the company's history. He had climbed the corporate ladder through sheer ambition and ruthless efficiencies in expensive suits. His luxury car, his penthouse apartment, everything about him screamed success. On his wrist was a diamond-encrusted Patek Philippe watch worth more than most people's annual salary. It had been a gift to himself after closing a multi-million-dollar deal. As the meeting continued, Richard gestured emphatically, his watch catching the light. The executives took notes, their faces tense. Nobody wanted to be on Richard's bad side. Near the corner of the room, an elderly black man in worn denim work clothes quietly pushed a cleaning cart. His name was Samuel Hayes, and he was 73 years old. He had kind eyes, weathered hands, and a gray flat cap that he wore every day. Samuel had been a janitor at Castellano Industries for 15 years. He came in early, stayed late, and did his work with quiet dignity. Most executives walked past him without a second glance to them. He was invisible, just part of the furniture, but Samuel didn't mind. He had learned long ago that a man's worth wasn't measured by how others saw him, but by how he saw himself. As Richard continued his presentation, Samuel carefully emptied the waste bins and wiped down the credenza. He moved slowly, methodically, the way he had done everything in his life, with patience and attention to detail. Meeting lasted another hour. When it finally ended, the executives filed out, loosening their ties and checking their phones. Richard gathered his papers, his mind already on the next crisis. He reached for his briefcase and then froze. His watch was gone. Richard's heart began to race. He checked his wrist again, thinking perhaps he had imagined it, but no, the watch was definitely missing. He looked around the table, under his chair, on the floor. Nothing. Where is it? He muttered, panic rising in his chest. That watch represented everything he had achieved. It was a symbol of his success, his status, his power, and now it was gone. Richard's eyes swept the room and landed on Samuel, who was pushing his cart toward the door. The old janitor was almost out of the boardroom. You, Richard shouted, his voice echoing off the glass walls. Samuel stopped and turned around slowly. Yes, sir. Come back here. Samuel walked back into the room, his expression calm but cautious. Richard strode toward him, his face flushed with anger. My watch is missing. A very expensive watch. And you were the only other person in this room. Samuel's eyes widened slightly. Sir, I don't know anything about your watch. Empty your pockets, Richard demanded. Sir, I didn't take anything. I said empty your pockets. The room had gone silent too. Executives who hadn't yet left stood frozen in the doorway, watching. Samuel slowly reached into his pockets and pulled out a worn leather wallet, a set of keys, and a faded photograph of a young woman. He placed them on the table. Richard barely glanced at them. Check his cart. He ordered one of the executives. The man hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but did as he was told. He rifled through the cleaning supplies, the trash bags, the bottles of disinfectant. Nothing. Check his jacket pockets, his lunch bag, everything. Samuel stood perfectly still, his dignity intact despite the humiliation. The executive found nothing. Richard's face grew redder. I know you took it. A watch like that doesn't just disappear. You people always think you can get away with. Careful, Samuel said quietly, his voice steady but firm. It was the first time he had interrupted Richard. The CEO stopped mid-sentence, shocked by the old man's audacity. Excuse me, I said. Be careful with your next words, Samuel repeated, because some things once said can't be taken back. Richard laughed harshly. Are you threatening me? I could have you arrested. I could have security drag you out of here in handcuffs. You could, Samuel agreed. But that won't make you right. Before Richard could respond, the boardroom door opened. A tall man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit walked in. Jonathan Castellano was 65 years old, the chairman of the board, and Richard's uncle. He had founded Castellano Industries 40 years ago and had handpicked Richard as his successor. Jonathan's Silver hair was swept back. And his presence commanded immediate respect. "What's going on here?" Jonathan asked. His voice calm but authoritative. Richard turned to him. "Relieved, Uncle Jonathan. This janitor stole my watch. I've searched him, but he must have hidden it somewhere. I want him fired, and I want to press charges." Jonathan's eyes moved from Richard to Samuel for a long moment. He said nothing then. His expression changed. The commanding businessman softened into something else entirely. "Dad," Jonathan said quietly. Richard's mouth fell open. What? Samuel smiled. A gentle smile that reached his tired eyes. "Hello, son." The room seemed to tilt. Richard looked from Jonathan to Samuel and back again, unable to process what he was hearing. "This is your father," he stammered. Jonathan walked over to Samuel and embraced him. The old janitor hugged his son back. And for a moment, expensive suits in the corporate setting fell away. They were just a father and son who loved each other. "Dad works here," Jonathan said. Turning to Richard, "He has for 15 years. By his choice. I offered him an executive position, a comfortable retirement, a place in my home. He refused it all." Samuel nodded. "I'm a working man, always have been. I don't need fancy titles or corner offices. I find dignity in honest work, in keeping things clean, in being useful." Richard felt like the floor was dropping out from under him. "But why?" he asked weakly. "Why would you work as a janitor when you could?" "Because these hallways teach me more than any boardroom," Samuel said. "I see how people treat those they consider beneath them. I see who has real character and who just wears it like one of those expensive suits." He looked at Richard with disappointment. "I've watched you for 3 years now, Richard. Watched you step over people, ignore basic courtesy, treat employees like numbers on a spreadsheet. I kept hoping I'd see something different. Some kindness. Some humanity." Jonathan's face had grown stern. "Richard, you accused my father of theft? You humiliated him in front of your colleagues. You were about to say something inexcusable before he stopped you. I didn't know." Richard protested weakly. "And that's exactly the problem," Jonathan said, his voice hard now. "You didn't know, because you never bothered to see him as a human being. He's been cleaning your office for 3 years, and you never once asked his name." Samuel placed a gentle hand on his son's arm. "It's all right." "Jonathan, no, Dad. It's not all right, Jonathan." Turn back to Richard. "Your watch is in your briefcase. Side pocket. I saw you put it there yourself at the start of the meeting because you were worried about scratching it on the table." Richard's hands shook as he opened his briefcase. There, in the side pocket, was his watch. He had completely forgotten. The shame hit him like a physical blow. "I'm sorry," he whispered. But the words felt hollow. Samuel looked at him for a long moment. "I accept your apology, son. But apologies don't mean much without change." He picked up his photograph from the table, the one that had been emptied from his pockets. "This is my wife, Richard's grandmother. She passed away 20 years ago. She used to clean houses for wealthy families, and some of them treated her the way you treated me today, like she was invisible. Like she didn't matter." His eyes grew distant with memory, but some of them saw her, really saw her. Asked about her life, her dreams, her family. "Those people taught me that character isn't about what you have. It's about how you treat people who can do nothing for you." Jonathan put his arm around his father's shoulders. "No, Dad taught me that lesson when I was young. It's why I built this company on respect and dignity. It's why we have profit sharing, good benefits, and fair wages. Because every person who works here matters." He looked at Richard with disappointment. "I thought you understood that. I thought I was leaving my company in good hands." The weight of those words crushed Richard. He had worked so hard to get here, to prove himself, to earn his uncle's approval, and in one moment of arrogance and accusation, he had destroyed it all. "Uncle Jonathan." "Please," Richard said, his voice breaking. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. I'll do anything to make this right. It's not me you need to convince." Jonathan said. Richard turned to Samuel. The old janitor was putting his wallet and keys back in his pockets. "Preparing to continue his work, sir?" Richard said. And this time the word held respect. "Mr. Hayes, I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try." Samuel studied him. "You really want to make it right?" "Yes, sir. And spend a week doing my job." Richard blinked. "What work as a janitor for 1 week?" "Same hours I work. 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., clean the offices, empty the trash, scrub the toilets. See what it's like to be invisible." Jonathan smiled slightly. "That's a good idea, Dad. Richard wanted to protest. To say it was beneath him, but he caught himself. That was exactly the kind of thinking that had gotten him into this mess. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. And so Richard Castellano, CEO of Castellano Industries, spent the next week in janitorial coveralls. He arrived at 5 a.m. His body aching from sleep deprivation, he cleaned bathrooms, emptied trash bins, and mopped floors. He watched executives walk past him without a glance, heard them make dismissive comments, saw how they left messes expecting someone else to clean up. It was humbling in a way Richard had never experienced, but more than that, it was educational. He met the other janitors, the security guards, the cafeteria workers. He learned their names, their stories, their dreams. He discovered that the quiet woman cleaned the executive floor was putting 3 kids through college, that the older man who mopped the lobby had fought in Vietnam, that the young guy on the night shift was studying engineering. These weren't invisible people. They were human beings with rich, complex lives, and Richard had been blind to all of it on Friday afternoon. As Richard was finishing his shift, Samuel found him in the supply closet. How are you holding up? Richard looked up, exhausted but different somehow. Softer. I'm embarrassed, he admitted. Embarrassed that it took this to open my eyes. I've been so focused on climbing the ladder that I forgot there were people holding it steady at the bottom. Samuel nodded. That's a good start. But awareness is just the first step. What matters is what you do next. Richard took off his work gloves. I want to change things. Better pay for everyone, not just executives. Better benefits. More respect built into how we operate. I want people to feel valued, not invisible. Those are nice words, I know. Need to prove them with actions. Samuel smiled. Now you're learning. 3 months later, Richard stood in front of the entire company at the annual meeting. The changes he had implemented were already making a difference. Wages had increased across the board. Employee recognition programs had been established. The company culture was shifting from cutthroat competition to collaborative respect. I want to tell you about a man who taught me the most important lesson of my career, Richard said to the assembled crowd. His name is Samuel Hayes, and he's been a janitor here for 15 years. He's also the father of our chairman and one of the wisest people I've ever met. He gestured to Samuel, who sat in the front row beside Jonathan. The old janitor looked uncomfortable with the attention, but nodded graciously. 3 months ago, I falsely accused Mr. Hayes of stealing from me. I humiliated him. I saw him as beneath me, as someone who didn't matter. I was wrong in every possible way. Richard's voice grew stronger. That moment of ugliness became a turning point. It forced me to see how I had been leading, with arrogance instead of compassion, with ego instead of empathy. Mr. Hayes challenged me to walk in his shoes, and that week changed my life. He looked directly at Samuel. Thank you, sir, for your grace, your wisdom, and your patience. Thank you for teaching me that true success isn't measured by the watch on your wrist, but by how you treat the person cleaning the room where you dropped it. The audience laughed softly, then burst into applause. Samuel stood and nodded to Richard, a gesture of respect and forgiveness. After the meeting, as people mingled, Richard approached Samuel one more time. I know I can't undo what I did, he said, but I hope I can spend the rest of my career proving that I learned from it. Samuel clasped Richard's shoulder. You're on the right path, son. Just remember, character isn't built in the big moments. It's built in the small ones. In how you greet the security guard. In whether you remember the receptionist's name. In treating every person like they matter, because they do. Richard said because they do, Samuel agreed, as Richard walked away. Jonathan joined his father. You did good, Dad. Samuel smiled. I just hope it sticks. Real change takes time. It will stick, Jonathan said confidently. You know how I know? How? Because yesterday I saw Richard having lunch in the cafeteria with the maintenance crew. It's not networking, not looking for something, just talking to them like human beings, like friends. Samuel's eyes glistened with tears. Then maybe there's hope after all. There's always hope. Dad, you taught me that. The two men stood together, looking out over the company they had both shaped in their own ways, one through business acumen and vision, the other through quiet dignity and wisdom, and somewhere between them, a younger man was learning that the most valuable things in life can't be bought with money or worn on your wrists. They're earned through kindness, humility, and the simple act of seeing the humanity in every person you meet, no matter who they are or what they do, because in the end, we're all just people trying to make it through this world with a little bit of grace, and sometimes the greatest. Teacher comes not in an expensive suit, but in worn denim and a flat cap, carrying a mop and a lifetime of wisdom. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it touched your heart and reminded you that everyone deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their position, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate kindness, humility, and the wisdom that comes from treating every person with the respect they deserve. And please leave a comment below telling me about a time you learned an important lesson about respect or when someone surprised you with their wisdom. Your stories inspire our community and remind us all that character matters more than status. See you in the next video.